request came in on a Tuesday, which is the kind of detail that only matters in retrospect. I was 3 hours into my shift at the Regional Humanitarian Routing Bureau, Sector 11, Outer Rim Administration, and the queue was, as always, longer than anyone in my division had the staff to clear. Resettlement permits, transit waivers, emergency food aid allocations, resource transfer approvals for species I had never heard of, processed by people in offices I had never visited, destined for places I would never see. I had been doing this work for 11 years. I was good at it. I was also, by that Tuesday morning, constitutionally incapable of being surprised by it. The Chithari request was Form 7, which is the lowest priority intake category we have, routine resettlement inquiry. Attached to it was a 6-page habitat assessment, a population census, and a caste registry document I needed a translation plug-in to read. It was filed in the original Chithari administrative script, a dense columnar notation that the plug-in rendered into flat bureaucratic standard, without any warmth at all. I read it the way I read everything, efficiently. What the Form 7 said, stripped of its formality, was this. The Chithari labor caste, approximately 412,000 individuals, Ketness, non-aggressive, occupying the sealed sector known as the Ket perimeter, had been inside the quarantine zone for 9 years. The Galactic Resettlement Council had voted, 3 sessions running, to deny their resettlement petition. The grounds cited were, depending on which session's minutes you read, biosafety concerns, jurisdictional ambiguity, resource allocation priority conflicts, and, in the most recent session, a line I read twice before I believed it. Population non-viability threshold, species continuation, not assessed as recoverable. Population non-viability. That was the language they used. 412,000 living creatures, filed under non-recoverable. The Form 7's request was modest. It asked for a single resettlement permit, one, as a test case, to allow a Chithari family unit of 11 individuals to transfer to a neutral habitat station, pending full application review. I flagged it standard yellow, which means requires upward routing, attached my intake summary, and sent it up the chain. I noted in my summary that the quarantine zone's food supply reports, also attached, showed the Ket perimeter's internal stores at 11% of minimum viable reserves. I added, because I had been doing this long enough to know what 11% means, a recommendation for emergency resource review. Then I went back to the queue. I did not expect to hear anything back quickly. You learn, in this work, to calibrate your expectations to the pace of the institutions above you. The council moved at the speed of consensus, which is to say it moved the way glaciers move, imperceptibly, and usually in the wrong direction. I assumed the Form 7 would sit in the upward queue for 4 to 6 weeks, return stamped with a procedural hold, and I would reroute it and note the date and move on. 6 days later, the response came back. It was not a procedural hold. I had to read it 3 times before I understood what I was looking at. It was not an approval stamp. It was not a denial. It was a deployment authorization, a document type I had processed exactly twice in 11 years, both times in the wake of major natural disasters. The authorization was signed, not by the council, not by the regional allocation board, not by anyone in the ordinary chain I routed through. It was signed by the Office of Humanitarian Response, Earth Branch, and it was countersigned by the commander of the 7th Relief Expeditionary Group. I sat with it for a moment. Then I read the attached deployment summary. 3 engineering corps, 47 personnel, heavy construction and habitat assembly, were already in transit to the Ket perimeter. They carried with them prefabricated habitat modules, rated for chitinous physiology, with atmosphere and temperature specs pulled from the Chithari census I had included in my Form 7 intake. 11 vessels, grain carriers, water reclamation units, 2 medical supply freighters, and a hospital barge, were staged at the nearest waypoint and would enter the Ket perimeter corridor within 36 hours of authorization receipt. The hospital barge alone carried enough nutrition packs to sustain the Chithari population for 18 months. The grain carriers carried enough for 3 years beyond that. I kept reading. The final section of the deployment summary was the one that made me set my coffee down and not pick it up again for a long time. Standing orders had been issued to the 7th Relief Expeditionary Group's attached battle group. 6 cruisers, 2 carrier-class support vessels, 1 long-range patrol frigate, to take up position at the outer boundary of the Ket perimeter. Their orders were not offensive. They were not there to fight anyone. They were there to hold the perimeter against any authority. The document used that word, any, that attempted to enforce the Galactic Resettlement Council's population non-viability ruling while the humanitarian deployment was in progress. The holding order had no expiration date. We filed 1 request. We asked for 1 permit, a test case, 11 individuals. They sent engineers, grain ships, and a full battle group. I processed the authorization. I logged the deployment. I updated the Chithari file from standard yellow to active, humanitarian response underway, and noted the date. Then I sat at my desk for a few minutes doing nothing, which is not something I do often. The Chithari had been in the Ket perimeter for 9 years. 9 years of council sessions, resettlement denials, population assessments, jurisdictional arguments. 9 years of documents filed in columnar script that nobody outside their own caste could read without a plug-in. They had watched the council vote against them 3 times, and had, as far as I could tell from the records, continued to file paperwork. They had not appealed to gods. They had not broadcast a distress signal on an open frequency. They had filed a Form 7, 1 form, at the lowest priority level. I thought about the line in the council minutes: population non-viability threshold, species continuation not assessed as recoverable, and I thought about what it must mean to read that, in your own language, about your own people. I do not know what the Chithari experience as emotion. The bioscans in the census were physiological, not psychological. But I know what 11% food reserves means. I know what 9 years of denied petitions means. I know what it means to file a Form 7 asking for 1 permit and to wait. The engineers arrived at the Ket perimeter 31 hours after authorization. The grain convoy followed 14 hours later. The hospital barge docked at the sector's primary station, while the Chithari, by all accounts in the initial deployment log, stood at the docking corridor in groups of several hundred, and did not move, and did not make any recorded sound. The deployment team's first contact report, filed by the engineering corps lead, a woman named Vasquez, whose name I logged and then forgot and later remembered, noted that the Chithari did not approach the human crews for the first 6 hours. They watched from a distance. They watched the way you watch something you have stopped believing in. Then, slowly, they came forward, and the work began. The battle group took its position at the outer perimeter. The council sent a formal inquiry to Earth Branch, requesting clarification of the deployment's legal basis. Earth Branch acknowledged receipt of the inquiry. The battle group did not move. I do not know exactly what the council did after that, because it is not part of my routing queue. I know that no enforcement order was filed. I know that the population non-viability designation was quietly removed from the Chithari file in the council's own registry approximately 3 weeks later, under a procedural revision that cited updated habitat assessment data. I logged the revision when it came through. I noted the date. 11 weeks after the deployment, a document arrived at my bureau. It was filed in the original Chithari administrative script. The translation plugin rendered it, as always, without warmth. Flat and columnar, exactly the way their Form 7 had arrived. But it was short, 1 line. I read the translation twice, the same way I had read the council's non-viability notation, slowly, and because I wanted to be certain I had it right. It said, "Request received. We did not expect this." I filed it under the Chithari case number. I noted the date. I went back to the queue. I have thought about that line more than I have thought about most things in 11 years of this work. I do not know who wrote it. I do not know what it cost them to write it, what it takes for a species that has been told 3 times by a Galactic Council that their continuation is not worth assessing, to put those 5 words into a formal document and send it to a bureau they had every reason to expect would do nothing. I know what we sent. I know how much of it there was. I know the battle group is still there.